What we do know for sure is that a group of pitchers and hitters, for that matter, but we're not talking about them today, but a group of players outside of the top 300 picks will become studs. It happens every single year. The tough part is knowing exactly who that's going to be coming into the season. So Doug and I are going to try to navigate some of that territory to find you some of these potential gems. And Doug, I want to start with your first one because I really, really do like this guy. He's already been through so much in his career. I'm starting with the guy who has the initials KR, and just in case you're wondering where I'm going here. And he's already been, like I said, through so much, even though he barely debuted. He went through some tumult in college with his draft situation. But now, Kumar Rocker is a Ranger. We saw a debut last year that wasn't too bad, 3 starts. And now you're seeing more this year for a guy going outside the top 300 picks at pick 320 right now. What do you think about Kumar Rocker?
I think he has such intriguing baselines. I know that he's when you look at his minor league track record, he's struggled a bit with the walks, which I mean, this day and age, you look at pretty much the track record of every young guy, and we're gonna talk about a few young guys today, and all of them have tons of Ks and tons of walks. It's just the way of the world now. And so it used to be you could get a good read on a guy based on his K to walk ratio, even in the minor leagues, kind of what that picture is going to look like in the major league level. And I think that's getting a little bit tougher now. In fact, we're seeing a lot of these young guys, such as Kumar Rocker, granted it's only a dozen innings or whatever, but we're seeing some of these guys who are posting their best walk rates at the highest levels. And I think part of that, it just talks, that speaks to the competition and the way the game changes. But anyways, when it comes to Kumar Rocker, his baselines are so interesting. And I'm about to throw a comp out there, and I'm not saying I'm always dangerous with comps because I don't usually like them, but this comp is so rare. I'm going to throw out the comp of Max Scherzer, and especially Max Scherzer when he was young, when he was still coming up,
So Diamondbacks era, Scherzer,
Yeah.
you're saying, not even Tigers era yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
I feel like he has kind of a unique delivery. It looks almost stiff in the early going. Oh, and by the way, just for the people out there, I'm going to talk about mechanics.
Of course. We wouldn't have it any other way.
But yeah, he's when it came to Scherzer, he was almost stiff at the beginning of his delivery, but he ended with like really strong balance, really strong posture, his head upright, low arm slot, and he has this like almost a headbutting move at the end. He has so much of the what we call the flexion. These guys where they almost have that headbutting move. Scherzer has the most extreme one I've ever seen. So Rocker doesn't necessarily have that, but he's also kind of stiff on the early going. He's also really low arm slot, really strong posture at the release point. He also has a kind of a late release like Scherzer, and he has a lot of that flexion. And then I just see the way that the ball comes out of his hand. That's what it reminds me of, is the way it came out of Scherzer's hand. So I might be getting biased by that because I am really big on those baselines because I feel like Scherzer wasn't even really appreciated. People saw him as a big draft pick and they saw the velocity, just like with Rocker. They saw the raw stuff. But when I see a player who is already that firm near release point, then that just ratchets up not only the upside, but how quickly they could do it. So I think someone like Kumar Rocker could have an impact pretty quickly. That said, obviously they're going to limit his innings. So if you're drafting someone like this is the last starter on your rotation or maybe the first guy on your bench. I look at Rocker as having that huge upside. I don't like locking in that bench spot that early, but he might break spring training with the team. The end of the Rangers, rotation I'm not sure about. And I know he and Leiter are both going to be trying to crack that rotation. So I think especially if you have an early draft, he makes for a very intriguing high upside pick. And if you happen to have drafted DeGrom, he's almost like the perfect, what is it in fantasy football, running back?
Like handcuff. A handcuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that though too. Starting pitcher handcuffs, right? You take a guy that's established in terms of they're going to have a guaranteed rotation spot if they're healthy, but we don't know that health piece. Get the 6th or 7th guy on the team, depending on how you feel about them. And that way, if DeGrom can't go, and they've got other guys too. Look, there's nothing. Tyler Molly has not been healthy now for a few years. Nathan Eovaldi is not the bastion of health, even though he's coming off a relatively healthy season. They've got some injury concerns there, so going for a 6 or 7 guy in Texas isn't necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah, by the time they break camp, he might out of necessity be in the rotation. So that's the kind of guy I love to target right around that time, because you're getting, people are filling out the back end of their roster. They're about to move over into bench mode. And it's like, okay, let me snag a high upside pick that might actually make an impact early.
Yeah, I like Rocker a lot. And I think we're in an era right now where we're not as concerned about guys with only 2 pitches. Strider's obviously the king of that, and he's really more the outlier. I don't think we can just say, oh, well, Strider does it, so everyone else can, because his 2 pitches are like basically both 80 grade pitches. But it does look like a 2-pitch arsenal right now, where it is kind of sinker slider. He has a distinct fastball, a 4-seamer, and sinker, so I guess it is technically 3 pitches. But where are you at on Rocker's arsenal, and do you see any potential development there? Maybe with adding a changeup, which he threw as like a show me pitch. I mean, he threw it 2% of the time. That's not even show me. That's nothing. A curveball that looks like he says on Fangraphs here, 1% of the time. Does he need another pitch, or can he work with a distinct 4-seam sinker slider combo there for Rocker?
That's a really good point. Absolutely. I do think he needs to broaden his arsenal. That's something that I think they're going to bring him all along slowly when it comes to innings. I think they're probably not going to give him more than 2 times through the order anyways. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I do think he needs to develop a 3rd pitch to complement the wicked fastball breaking ball combo. I always feel like, me, I love splitters, and especially guys like that, where it's like, look, just throw your fastball, just grip it a little bit differently. If you have someone who really knows how to teach a splitter, which actually is not that tough, that can be such an easy complementary pitch. And it might be interesting, actually. He's got Eovaldi right there, and Eovaldi's had the same issue his entire sticking career. He's been fastball, breaking ball guy. He's been trying to get that sticking off speed pitch. Man, I remember us being excited about him. I think on Stick and Tin Staff. How long has Captain Neo been around? Like, jeez.
The Eovaldi train, whenever I talk about him, I'm like, guys, I've been a fan since Dodger prospect days with this guy. I love Eovaldi. It is a long-term relationship I've had with this guy. So, yeah, I'm with you there. And I'm always fascinated by that too. And it's not like, not every player is good at communicating things to other players. So we don't know that. We can't just say, hey, Eovaldi, go teach him. But certain players are really good at letting the younger players know some things and teach. I know Wainwright has been credited. Jack Flaherty has basically said that he is his Sherpa. Like, he taught him so much in baseball. So it would be interesting to see. And by the way, Nick, I didn't use pitcher list there, but you guys have the same exact numbers. 1% changeup, 1% curveball. So they're not even really show me offerings for Rocker. It's 42% on the 4-seamer, 39% on the slider, and 17% on the sinker. So I do think as he evolves, he's going to need more. But maybe for this year specifically, because like you said, Doug, he's going to be more of a 4 or 5 inning guy. And I know that 4-inning thing scares people for fantasy purposes, but he probably is going to be more of that 4 or 5 inning type guy. He can succeed with a 2+ sort of pitch arsenal. Because again, even when the 4-seamer and the sinker are different, I still am reluctant to say it's a true 3-pitch mix, but the slider's also so good that maybe he just doesn't necessarily need much beyond that for Rocker.
It reminds me of bring a little McCullers at it, just throw sliders all day.
Yes. Remember when he threw like 50 straight at some point there?
I've never heard of him again.
Yeah, I really like Rocker, and I'm eager to see what he can do. Like I said, he's been through so much tumult already as a 24-year-old that it's nice to see some stability. He's with an organization. He made his debut. I imagine that there was a lot of pressure taken off of him last year just to kind of get things on track with his career. So it's a great first pick. Let's stay in the American League, go to the Central, and look at my first guy here, David Festa, who got a bit more of a deeper debut here. And after 2 bad starts to get it going, trip to Arizona that went south, and my Tigers ripped him the start after that. After those 2 bad starts, he had a 10.80 ERA. Oh my gosh, this new prospect, he stinks. Not so fast, my friend. And this is why I love checking game logs, because, if you just look at his composite ERA of 4.90, you're like, well, I'm not that excited about that. But if you take a look beyond those 2 starts, and I'm not saying they don't count, of course they count, but it does it does give you a clearer picture of who he is to say that he had a 381 ERA over those final 54 innings, as opposed to if he was just consistently giving up 4, 5, 6 runs a time. No, it was two very bad starts and then mostly good starts the rest of the way. There was really only other one or two bad ones, and then a bunch of good ones mixed in. I'm really excited to see what David Festa can do in Minnesota. I think that they've done a good job developing a lot of pitching right now. Lopez, Ryan, Ober are three of my absolute favorites right now. Chris Paddock can be working his way back. They have SWR, Simeon Woods Richardson. And I think Festa can crack that rotation. We currently, over at Fangraphs, we have him on the outside looking in, but I think he's another guy who could win a spot in spring. Are you moved by David Festa after a 20% strikeout minus walk and 13% swinging strike rate in his 64 inning debut?
Well, when it comes to young guys, and I'm going to look at mechanics anyways, but I'm always especially interested in the balance, the trade off between balance and power, because a lot of young guys, they have all this power, but haven't figured out how to harness it yet. And so I'm like, to me, that paints upside, but also creates a problem for them coming in if they have rough balance. Now, Festa is really interesting because you can guess, he has a lot of spine tilt. So of course, I'm not a huge fan of his posture, but he's interesting. Like he has a lot of momentum. He has a late release point. And when I was watching him, I'm like, usually guys with spine tilt, they lack release distance because every inch, you used to have a saying, every inch you move your head this way, it costs you 2 inches of depth at release point. And but with him, as I was watching him, it looked like he was almost lurching forward and then releasing the ball. And then I went and checked StatCast, and I love that StatCast now has metrics for this. They made me so happy that they have an extension metric now.
It's so good.
and sure enough, Festa had like an 89 extension. So it's like, okay, so he's already combating some of the issues with that. Meanwhile, it actually complements his arsenal really well. And the fact that he has so much spine tilt means he can have that late release point, which allows for the depth, and it still allows him to keep his pitches up, especially with the depth of pitches that he has. It's really interesting. He's kind of fascinating, to be honest. I was having a really good time watching him. And so I'm not ready to say yay or nay. I'm more interested at this point.
Yeah, I am too, to see like what we get here for a follow-up to his breakout campaign. Because again, once you get past those first two hideous starts against Arizona and Detroit, he was mostly good the rest of the way, and a lot of great swing and miss. Minnesota, I mentioned how well they've been doing with the pitching development, but they've really kind of had a model of guys with great strikeout to walk ratios, but also home run issues, because I think that they live in the zone and they say fill up the zone, don't walk too many guys, get a bunch of strikeouts, and if the home runs come, they come. Maybe they're going to be solos more often than not. It looks like he fit the same mold when you look at the composite numbers, but again, that's where game logging gives you a little clearer picture here, because he gave up 4 homers in those first 2 starts, and that's part of why he has a 1.3 homer 9 for the entire season, but it's 0.83 from the first 2 starts on. So a much better home run rate than we usually see from the Minnesota Twins guys. And his walk rate's a little bit more elevated than some of those guys. So he isn't quite fitting their mold there, but still offering a lot of upside. I think the strikeout upside is what I really like here from Festa, that even if we do have some ups and downs here as he kind of figures out going through his first entire season, I think you're still going to get the strikeouts consistently. And as a late round gamble, I'll take a guy who misses a ton of bats and kind of see where it lands from there.
Yeah, good call. Good call. No, he's a very intriguing player.
All right, let's move on to your second guy, a guy that I really like. And I think Nick's actually been a little bit down on him. So I'm curious to see how you two run counter to each other here. DJ Hers with Washington definitely showed some upside. You want to talk about strikeout upside? It is there in spades with Hers. The interesting lefty for the Nats. I'm very much in on the Nats. I think they're actually becoming a little bit more of a wide awake sleeper, where everyone's calling them a sleeper. So maybe they're not such a sleeper team. But I really do think that they're one of these upstart teams. Really compelling lineup with some great young pieces: Abrams, Wood, Dylan Cruz. Luis Garcia Jr., Jose Tena, and then a couple of veteran guys like Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Bell. And then the pitching side last year, at different parts of the year, we saw greatness out of Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, Mitchell Parker, and DJ Hers himself. So where do we go here in year 2 after 88 and 2/3 innings of a 28% K rate, 4.16 ERA, 126 WHIP for DJ Hers? What's in store for year 2 for the 24-year-old?
Yeah, maybe some of this is buyer's remorse, because in like TGFBI Barf last year, I owned pretty much every other Nats pitcher. I had some Mitchell, I had some Parker, I had some Irvin. I totally missed out on the Hurst train, and so maybe this is me trying to make up for it. But seriously, I love this guy's delivery. He has my new favorite thing when it comes to pitching mechanics is what I call impulse. And in fact, I was just doing physics with one of my students yesterday, and we were working on impulse. What impulse is it's change of momentum. It's like the guys who accelerate as they're going down the mound, the guys who seem to go faster and faster and faster. This guy is ridiculous. That's what I liked so much about Lincecum. The guys
Yes.
who, and with him it was more obvious. He just leapt. But with Hers, he has so much power behind his delivery. He's still figuring out how to harness it. He's still not totally consistent. But the fact that he's so hard to hit right now means that, like, fantasy-wise, your whip will be fine. I think he's going to win out when it comes to his ability to dominate in stretches. I think his stuff is, like, not even that exciting. I think he's the average, like 94 or something like that on his fastball.
94 fastball. Neither the changeup nor the slider is super standard. I think the changeup's the better of the two, but like all of it, all 3 pitches together led to a bunch of swing and miss. There is some walks there, 9% walk rate, not crazy as long as we're under that double-digit rate, which he was all the way coming up. So you talk about guys having their best walk rates at the top level. We saw that with Hers. Double digits everywhere in the minors, like 15, 16, 17% rates even. Then he gets to the majors and he puts up a 9%, which I can live with if you're striking out 28% there. Where are you on his control? Do you believe that he can maintain something more in the 9% range, or do you have some concerns that the double-digit rates that we saw in the minors might come back?
Oh, I think he's just going to get better and better when it comes to the walk numbers, because basically he's what I was talking about, what I look for in a young player, where he has tons of power, but he hasn't figured out how to command it yet.
Mm-hmm.
However, he has all the baselines for it. So he does have the balanced baselines. He does have the posture baselines. I give him a B to B plus for his balance of posture, stability. Whereas his power is already it looks like an A- power, if not maybe a B plus power already. But for a young player, this is ridiculous. Just insane baseline grades. His repetition isn't going to be there yet because he's still figuring out how to control that power. But as he gets bigger, as he fills out, as he learns to repeat his delivery, and as he stabilizes it, I mean, wow, I think he has a huge ceiling. So, I don't worry about him going backwards on the walk number so much. But I could be totally wrong. I could be 2 years away. I know what's-his-face Mackenzie did that to me.
Yeah, and like that was the thing too, though. Mackenzie Gore started off so brilliantly. It looked like he had arrived. Things were good. Then he had that big lull in the middle of the summer, but then closed strong again. So that was really interesting to at least see him rebound and finish strong for Gore. So I'm actually really excited about him again this year too. But with Hers, I think they've really got something here. Remember, he was the return for Jamer Candelario from the Cubs, and I think one thing that really impressed me with Hers too was that he basically had a neutral platoon split. He was able to get lefties out, and I think that goes back to that changeup being his best secondary offering. And anytime I see a lefty coming up early and being able to get righties out, I'm really, really encouraged by that. So I think there's a lot to like here with DJ Hers. And when you're talking about a 356 ADP this month in Draft Champions Leagues, I'm all over that for Hers.
Yeah, I feel like...
Excuse me, it's actually 319. I hadn't selected Draft Champions yet, but still, 319, post 300. I'm paying that all day for Hers.
Yeah, he's he's kind of my pick to click this year. He's going to end up on all sorts of my teams.
That's a really good one. I like him quite a bit. This one, man, maybe you need to talk me off of this guy. So feel free to be negative here if you feel that way. But I can't quit Reed Detmers. I know I'm an idiot, but me and my Angels pitchers, I don't know. I don't know if anyone had a more disparate run of games when you look at game score. Now, game score is not the best metric by any stretch. It's a metric that starts at 50 and gives you credits and debits based on how you do in a game. The guy who created it, Bill James, doesn't even like it. I think it's actually a decent like snapshot look, right? Like you can't have a 55 game score or better, 55 or better, that was actually a bad game. Meanwhile, you can't really have a 45 or lower that was a good game. So I think when you're looking at those sorts of things, right? We saw 560s out of 60 or better out of Detmers last year, including 2 in the 70s. And then we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 under 40. And like that sort of discrepancy between the top and bottom was insane. I'm just going to start with what the hell's wrong with this guy? Why can't he figure it out? Because we've seen glimpses. We've seen a no-no. We've seen, months of quality work. We saw the highs and lows last year. We're now approaching 400 career innings, 385, which is still not that much over 4 years. He's only 25 years old. This is why I keep hope with him, is because he misses bats. We've seen glimpses of greatness before, and I think he can put it all together, but I'm curious what's missing. Why does he keep going through these bad cycles that end up with him in the minors and all of us questioning why we even drafted this guy in the first place? I'm going back to the well with Detmers. Should I be doing that?
Well, I mean, first off, like you said, he's still super young. I mean, there's plenty of his contemporaries who are like just, guys who got drafted out of college who are just now cracking the majors. He's already got 4 years under his belt. So,
Right.
I mean, and I'm really glad that you cited the game scores, because that really underscores how good he can be in the moment. And I think that has extra value in fantasy, especially if you can hit it right. Of course, you hit it wrong, you get blown up, and then your ratios are screwed for a month.
You miss the gems and eat the bad ones too. You love that when that happens, right? When you're going back and forth with a guy on the reserve roster and you keep missing the gems.
Of course. But he's really interesting in the sense of like, so I was just talking about DJ Hers. So he's actually very similar mechanically. They're both lefties, but they both have that big impulse that starting they both start kind of quick, but they both finish strong. And the difference is that Hers already has better command near release point. Like he's already harnessed his crazy power better than Detmers has, despite the fact that Detmers, as far as we've seen a lot more of him. He still has more of that flail near release point. And for me, flail isn't always bad. And what I mean by flail, the glove side is all over the place. And
yeah.
And unfortunately, that usually is tied to an inconsistent release point. Not with everybody. There are some guys whose flail is fine, but he's not one of them. And he'll have some starts where it looks like that flail is staying firm until after release point, and other ones where it's gone right when his front foot hits. So you talk about that inconsistency. I just think he has that inconsistency, and it's worth remembering that baseball is a sport where you wake up one morning and you don't feel right, and nothing is quite working the way it usually works. You know what I mean? And I think he has those days where his timing is just off. In fact, I remember I used to love watching Tim Lincecum do this, because for him, he was so extreme with his momentum, but his momentum and timing would be so off just by a hair, but he could feel it. And so he would be too quick or whatever. And so you'd see him overcompensate for it and be way too slow the next delivery. Then he'd overcompensate the other way, and the next two deliveries would be high because he was too quick and foot strike. But so you can see these guys who can feel that part and how they're trying to tinker with it. It's really hundredths of a second they're trying to mess with.
Right.
And that's
on the fly too, in the midst of a game. That's so difficult.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm so big on balance and stability, is that tells me, okay, so you have more of a buffer for when things go wrong, because they're going to go wrong. If you don't have that, then, oh boy, things are going to go wrong and you're going to go off the rails. So unfortunately with Detmers, he is getting better and better, but I haven't seen him even have be able to harness his own delivery as well as say hers does.
Yeah, and I think that's the inconsistency that we've seen with Detmers, which is why he's been able to look like, the next ace in the making at times. And then other times you're wondering how he even got past double A. Like it really is that disparate between his good and his bad. But a 25-year-old who's shown the glimpses that we've seen from him and has the elite slider, I'm going to stick with him at least one more year. He's going around pick 358. By the way, it is worth noting that in the composite draft champions ADP, both Rocker and Festa are outside the top 300. If you're looking at just this month of January, they both crept inside at 286 for Rocker and 293 for Festa. However, their max picks are still outside of the top 300. So we might have been cheating there a little bit, but I know I was looking at the composite, not just this month, and I'm sure you were too. Just if anyone's looking at it saying, hey, those guys aren't technically outside the top 300. It's close enough there, and we're going to stick with it. And maybe we'll give some bonus picks after anyway that we can make up for it. Because I got other Angels I want to talk about. I have to say something about Jose Soriano. So I want to talk about your next guy here. This guy got traded from one of the better pitchers parks, at least in terms of home runs. It is actually a sneaky, decent offensive park, but it does suppress homers. I'm talking about Kansas City's park. To Cincinnati, which is arguably the best hitting park that isn't just environment based, which Colorado, of course, is the single best hitters park there is. But then Cincinnati's right there. And this is Brady Singer getting traded from KC to Cincinnati, and yet he still makes your list here. What are we going to see out of Brady Singer moving from Kansas City to Cincinnati this year?
Well, with Brady Singer, and he's similar to Detmers in the sense of how maddening he can be. Mm-hmm. How he can have those elite starts where he seems to line it all up and then have a stinker that just kills you. Singer, I mean, I'm trying to imagine. Remember, let's see, where I was looking, his ADP was in the 400s. What's his ADP on there?
This month, Singer is 358, so still very late. And that's just this month only on Draft Champions. So he's moved up a bit, but people are still thinking of him as an afterthought, which I think a lot of it is the park. I think if he was still in KC, his believers would still be around. I know my co-host on the Sleeper in the Bus podcast, Justin Mason, has been a long time Brady Singer fan, but he's moving off with the move to Cincinnati. Are you concerned about that? Because he's had a little bit of a home run issue. It's not egregious at 1.1 for his career. But once you start creeping up over 1 and you go to somewhere like Cincinnati, I do see some reasons for concern. Can he combat that, though?
Well, I actually really like the move.
Okay.
And this is all, once again, because of mechanics. I'm so biased. I'm so tainted by mechanics. But
at least it's based on something, though. Not just biased. I like this guy. You're using mechanics, and it's tried and true. With your history of identifying guys via their mechanics and who can be successful. What do you like about Singer's mechanics that is going to allow him to find some success in Cincinnati? Excuse me.
Well, he has strong baselines. His balance, his posture. I give him a B+ for his current grade for that. It's outstanding. But his problem is his momentum. He doesn't really move nearly as quickly as I would like him to move, and it's been maddeningly inconsistent, and moving slow leads to guys having inconsistent timing. And unfortunately, that's what the Royals do. The Royals have been screwing up pitchers for over a decade. Jeez,
so it's a team theory. Okay.
And I mean, like they used to drive me nuts because they would draft pitchers who had some of the best momentum in the draft. They took what's his name, Hoshaver. He had insane momentum. Yes. Aaron Crow had insane momentum. Like they were taking all these guys. Oh, Kyle Zimmer. Kyle Zimmer had the best momentum in that draft.
I loved Zim.
So they took all these guys where it's like, wow, they're targeting momentum. Excellent. And what they do, they immediately slowed them down. They immediately took away the thing that made them great. Mm-hmm. And have you heard of those guys since? Have they really done anything despite having, all first rounders? And then I won't go into the details, but some background with Lacey, the number 4 overall pick in 20, and where he was the picture of health, and then into their organization, and they wanted to do some weirdo stuff. And anyways,
and he broke down completely, right? Is he even in baseball still?
I'm not sure.
I haven't heard from Asa Lacey in quite some time.
So him getting out of there, I think, is good for him overall. So when I see a guy who already has strong balance like Singer does, and who has been shaky with the momentum, but now he's getting out of the organization that just takes it away from everyone. Like, can you imagine if Tyler Glasnow was in Kansas
Oh
City?
my
We would have
goodness.
never heard of him.
No.
No, geez. So it's, for me, again, it's all mechanics based. It's certain teams are good at certain things. I'm not saying the Reds are amazing at momentum, but they're fine as far as I know. Their pitchers have been actually pretty strong with it.
They're
But I
not
know
actively undercutting it like KC,
yeah,
though, is the main thing that you like about it.
exactly. KC is the only organization I know that it's been an organizational philosophy for 20, 30 years.
Why?
Just, you don't do that. I don't know. People think that helps command to go slower. Don't rush.
I could see that. That makes some sense when you first think about it. But then when you dive deeper, I don't know. I feel like a team should be smart enough to be able to dive deeper and understand that that's not working. That is clearly not working. We've messed up some guys. By the way, just to follow up on Asa Lacy, got TJ in March of 2024. So, not going to return until some point this year. And things have just been a disaster in the pros for him since being drafted out of A&M with the 4th overall pick back in 2020. So we'll see if they can figure something out with him. We did see somebody like Reagans go from Texas to KC, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't have popped off with Texas, because I think he probably would have if they'd have had the time to wait on him, but they wanted to go for the committed, the bird in hand, if you will, of Aroldis Chapman. And hey, they won the World Series, so no skin off their back, similar to the last Chapman trade that we were familiar with, the Gleyber Torres one, right? The teams won despite trading away the big asset for him. But why was Reagans able to find success there? Is momentum just not a huge part of his delivery?
That's a good question. I'm not going to answer it offhand.
Okay.
I'd have to dig into it. But that's a
I
really
sprung
good
that one
question.
on you.
No, and the thing is, like, so back in the day when I did this for a living, I totally would have had a great answer for you. But now I'm like, no, I got to research it. I'm an old man, and I don't, trying to run a business and whatnot. And it's like, I had such a thrill researching this stuff. By the way, I had so much fun doing this. To have this assignment of some of these late round pitchers, it brought me back to when I did this all the time. It was so much fun. But I have to admit that now I don't want to go and throw some guy under the bus when I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Well, I respect that. That's good. Okay, so we won't hit too much on that. But you're just saying Singer just getting out of KC, even though the park is more difficult, if they let him do what his mechanics will do naturally, then he might actually be fine despite moving to the more difficult park. So that is really interesting because, yeah, the price has really tanked on him. He's been somebody that's had some intrigue the last few years, but I think this move to Cincy has moved a lot of people away from Brady Singer. So I'll be interested to see where his spring price goes. I doubt it'll shoot up, because again, I think people are just going to be really, really scared of Cincinnati. And it's not like they haven't had guys be successful, right? I mean, we saw somebody like Hunter Green find a lot of success there last year. Now, I don't necessarily believe in that because he cut his home run to fly ball rate in half, and I don't really think he did anything to deserve that. But we saw Nick Martinez find some success. We've seen Lodolo have some success in flashes. It's not like pitchers can't be successful there. We just know that it is definitely a hitter's park. So keep tabs on Singer throughout the spring, and maybe he is a good late round find there that when everyone, the classic you zig when everyone's zagging or whatever you want to say there.
Exactly, which has really helped me out in fantasy football anyway. I went with receivers a couple of years ago, and whoo, everyone else is going running back.
I was going to say, and now it goes the other way, right? Now people were pivoting toward running backs this year. I had a few friends, went hard on Saquon when everyone was moving towards wide receivers, and obviously that paid off big for them too. So, it doesn't hurt necessarily to go against the grain sometimes, even when you're talking about a late round pick like Brady Singer. Let's go to my last guy here and talk about Joey Cantillo for the Cleveland Guardians. I'm a big fan of this young lefty, going to be 25 years old, had a nice 38 2/3 debut where we saw some glimpses. It was a 4.89 ERA, but a 3.69 SIERA. So the core skills were there to be better than what we saw. Home runs were the real big flaw here. 1.4 homer per 9, which was the real big issue, but a 27% K rate, a palatable but still a little high 9% walk rate. And like hers, had a bunch of double-digit walk rates coming up, then gets to the majors, and you probably not expecting him to put up his best walk rate, 9%, which again, I can live with. If you're striking out that many guys, I can live with a 9%. I'd love to see him shave it down further, but even if he can just stay in a 9-10% range and strike out 27 to 28%, I think we can find some success there. To really hit the next level, though, Cantillo will have to cut those homers. 1.4 is just untenable. No one can succeed with that kind of a home run rate. What can we see out of Joey Cantillo, the young lefty from Cleveland, in year 2 for him? Do you think there's some upside here? I've always had some trust for Cleveland as an institution, and they've developed a lot of good pitching in the last several years. I think Cantillo can be their next big guy. Do you see it similarly with him?
Absolutely, and I'm really glad you brought up that point. Like, again, I don't mean to be so slanted with certain teams, but I completely agree when it comes to Cleveland. They've earned my trust for pitcher development. All their guys are awesome. They value the same things that I look for, and I watched Quintillo pitch. He was really interesting. He's a big drop and drive guy, but it doesn't like my. The reason I usually worry about drop and drive is it tends to mess with balance. But his side to side balance is awesome. It's great, his lateral balance. So the drop and drive doesn't seem to hamper him in any way, and he helps his momentum. And in fact, I was watching him pitch, and he's another guy. I'm like, wow, he has this late release point. Maybe I'm just not watching enough pitchers these days, but man, I'm seeing all these guys with these late release points, and he looks like he has a crazy good extension. And I don't know, maybe I'm just off. So I went and checked that StatCast again. Well, guess what? 99 on his extension. Like,
wow.
And Cleveland is definitely an organization that appreciates that. I've told you about Tristan McKenzie and how I've been watching him since he was in high school and how his extension just popped to me. And obviously Cleveland appreciated it enough to draft him. So it's like, to see him in an organization that appreciates his strengths, that also realizes, some of the difficulties, but can hopefully give him the guardrails to keep him stable and, trim down that walk rate eventually, let his stuff shine. I think that was a great pick for you. I love Cantillo.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of his. And, PJ points out in the chat, like, he doesn't have a locked-in spot right now with Bybee, Lively, Gavin Williams, who I also love, Luis L. Ortiz, who they picked up from Pittsburgh, and then Tristan McKenzie. But while we do both like McKenzie for a lot of what he can do when he's healthy, it's the when he's healthy part that is really, really rough. So, and I was saying in the chat, I don't know that Ben Lively needs to necessarily have a locked-in spot. I know the 33-year-old was a savior for them last year because the starting pitching actually wasn't a strength outside of Bybee, and Lively was actually the number 2 guy behind him for quite some time. But he still had a 458 Sierra, 466 FIP. Like, I don't know. I don't think he necessarily needs to be locked in. But even if Cantillo's the 6th guy, I'll take my shot on him. It depends on your league format too. Can you stash somebody who might not get a starting job until 3-4 weeks into the season? If not, then maybe you don't go for a Cantillo. But in a league that is deeper where you can maybe stash somebody, that's where I would really like him because I can wait on him for a little bit because I do think he's first man up. And they've got injury concerns, namely with McKenzie, and then they have performance concerns with somebody like Lively. So I do think there'll be some avenues there. And there is a world to me where Cantillo could win a spot in spring. Like if he just greatly outperforms Lively, why wouldn't you put Cantillo in over Lively?
Yeah, good call. Absolutely. He's definitely someone worth keeping your eye on. And I mean, there were more than a handful of players that, got in 30, 40, 50 innings down the stretch that, might be ready to crack the rotation now. And those are the guys that are worth taking a look at right now.
Right. Yeah. Those guys that got the little glimpse, they got a little taste, and now teams are going to be wanting to give them a bigger role. And don't forget, it's a long season, y'all. 6-month season. Guys are going to go in and out. I know we put a lot of focus on the draft for good reason, and you can't just stash everyone, but I do think somebody who is the clear 6th man, and I think he is. If we get news to the contrary and they say, no, Slade Ciccone is or something like that, then I'll pivot off. But as it stands right now, I think that he's the 6th and maybe even the 5th and a half, meaning that he could win a spot in spring, and that's what keeps me bought in on Joey Cantillo. All right. We have 15 minutes left, chat. If you guys want to throw some names out post 300 pick that you want us to discuss, we can definitely do that. But I want to throw a few names at you myself, Doug, just to kind of see where you're at. And I'm springing these on you, so if you don't have a great feel on them, feel free to say, I don't have too much. I don't want to go too deep on somebody I don't know that much about. But I want to throw a few names at you first here, and I want to start with David Peterson in New York for the Mets. He's penciled in right now. They're also transitioning Clay Holmes to starter, which is actually really intriguing. I kind of want to get your thoughts on that too as a tangential point. But David Peterson showed some glimpses last year that were really intriguing. He's at pick 371, so he's very cheap right now. Do you see any potential upside for Peterson with the Mets? Could he be one of their dudes, one of their consistent guys in the rotation?
Interesting. So Peterson. So what's he penciled in as right now?
He's currently penciled in as the 4, and on roster resource, we actually have a 6-man carved out for them. Manaya, Senga, Montas Jr., Peterson, Clay Holmes, and Paul Blackburn. I don't know if they've committed to saying that they're doing a 6 yet. If they did, I missed that news. But they've got ample options here, because they also have Griffin Canning, who didn't pitch very well last year, but maybe getting out of LA will be all he really needs to pop off. Christian Scott's going to be out for most of the year, I believe, from his TJ. But then Tyler McGill is also lurking there. So they've got options, but Peterson has the 4 spot right now. So even if they shave back down to 5, he should still have a spot.
And especially as a lefty, they're gonna find a use for him.
Yes.
So I definitely think that he complements them well, and he's, for a lefty, I mean, I believe he's had a couple of years where he's got him like 10 Ks per 9 or something like that, where strikeouts have been a calling card. Last year, I don't think it was, but I could definitely see a place for him.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it dipped down quite a bit last year. After 28 and 26% the last 2 years, he dipped down to 20% last year with the strikeout rate, which was uncharacteristic. And I don't know if it was part of because he cut his walk rate too from 11% and 10% down to 9, which is not a huge gain. But I wonder if maybe there was some trade-off there of trying to be more control focused, maybe cost him some of the strikeouts. I don't know, because his home runs went down too. So maybe he was trying to improve his command and it cost him strikeouts. I'm not entirely sure there, but I don't necessarily think the 20% is who David Peterson is. I still think he could be more of a 23 to 25% guy.
Well, and he brings up a good general example, which is people often underestimate just how different these players can be year to year.
Yes.
And so someone like Peterson, he lost those strikeouts last season. Like, okay, maybe did he change something to his arsenal? Did he change something to his approach? Did he alter his mechanics? I'm not sure. A lot can happen in an off season, and then now he's another season move forward of it. I'm watching clips of him right now, and man, there's so many guys who lack the stability to harness their own power. He's one of them too, especially lefties. It's like, if you're a lefty and you can throw hard, it's all good. They expect that lefties are goofy, and so it's like they just let them have these deliveries that are totally unstable. Because here I am watching Peterson, and it's the same exact thing. And especially when you're breaking ball heavy, as Peterson is, you have to have a consistent release point in order to make your breaking ball work. Otherwise, you're going to be giving up a lot of home runs or walking a lot of guys. And he does both, doesn't he?
Yes.
There you go. Yes, there's definitely a place for him, but he has improvements to make, and he's definitely young enough to make those improvements. But
he's only 29. He's on the right side of 30. 454 innings over the last 5 years is not that much volume. Like, he's been around for 5 seasons, but we still haven't really seen the full season. He's slowly been raising his innings from 50 to 67 to 106 to 111 to 121 in the majors. Maybe this is the year we finally get a full season, 28 to 30 plus turns for David Peterson. I think we could see that this year, especially if he gets the strikeouts back.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a very interesting guy to watch.
Let's go to the Cubs and talk Ben Brown. Chat's really interested in Ben Brown. Live arm righty, had 55 innings last year, 96 mile an hour fastball, 29% K rate. You love to see that with a 14% swinging strike rate. Can he be the next great guy for the Cubs? He's another one of these 2-pitch guys, though. It's fastball and knuckle curve. Is that enough, or does he need that third pitch to really find success?
Oh, wow. Are they counting on him to log innings? Because
currently he is not penciled in as far as as far as roster resource goes, which, it's what Jason is. That's his best guess, reading the tea leaves and everything. But they got Imanaga, Steele, Tyone, Matthew Boyd, Javier Assad, and even Colin Ray as the SP6. So he's either, first up or fighting for a job in spring. Can Ben Brown finagle his way into the rotation in spring, or is he someone who's going to be an in-season addition?
Oh, let's see. I'm watching him right now. Oh,
Nick thinks he needs a cutter, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I do think that'd be a really nice pitch to add with the fastball and the knuckle curve. You love the two pitches he has right now. I think they both work, and maybe he could be a multi-inning reliever. But to be a starter, I think I would like to see that third offering from him.
Well, especially if the two aren't, as we were talking about this earlier with Kumar Rocker. If the two are elite, as his two are, then they can last. We're hoping, we're hoping for 4 to 5 innings from him.
Right.
So if you have someone who doesn't have the elite two offerings, I mean, they're a good two offerings, good enough to stay on their own is just two, but I think that's going to work against him.
Yeah, I don't think the fastball is quite there. Like the curve is awesome. I really, really like what the curve can do, and I think it's a big part of why he can get so many strikeouts. But to be a starter, I think I would need the fastball to be better. And we talked about how Strider is the poster boy for the 2-pitch guy. But again, those are both 80 grade pitches. And so that's on a different level than most of these 2-pitch guys that might have 1+ pitch and then the other being average or worse. And that's where I think Brown is right now. So probably an in-season guy for me. But again, if you're in the right sort of league where you can kind of stash somebody like that, he's going at pick 408, especially like draft champions where you just draft your 50 guys for the year and then there you go. I don't mind taking somebody like Brown. Cantillo's down at 415. Another guy that the chat was interested in from Minnesota, Zebby Matthews. Did you get a chance to look at him at all last year? Because I thought he was a pretty interesting prospect that they called up. He showed some glimpses of quality as well. Is Zebby Matthews somebody who's on your radar at all?
He's not. I'll take a look, but I was just now watching the Ben Brown stuff, and that knuckle curve is funny. It's more of it fades away like a changeup does. So trying to come up with the third pitch that complements that well, that's gonna be tough. I mean, at least he has a delivery. He has a lot of balance and posture. He's a very strong release point, but it's kind of he doesn't have much power. He's all stability, and so I don't know. What's he going to bring that's going to complement those well? He can't bring a slow curve. He's going to have something.
Well, what do you think about the cutter suggestion from Nick? Would that work?
That makes sense. That makes the cutter, slider sweeper, something like that. Something that allows him to expand the horizontal part of the zone because it just looks like he basically works the up down, but because of his release point, he could use a lot more lateral movement. So yeah, something with that run. Because his knuckle curve doesn't appear to have a whole lot of glove side run, but it could just be the field I'm looking at.
And, it's not great for fantasy, but I do think it could be a really nice 2 to 3 inning guy out of the bullpen for the Cubs in Ben Brown. Let's go to Zebby Matthews here with the Twins. Again, got a little 38 inning sample and was pretty good. 18% strikeout minus walk, highlighted by the 6% walk rate, which I really like. Was a home run. Should have pitched the home run derby, I think. He had a 2.6 homer per 9. So that was obviously really, really rough. A 21% homer to fly ball rate says maybe some of that was, some bad luck working against him. But I don't think we can just write it off as all bad luck and, hey, that doesn't matter. We don't count that against you. That is definitely a problem. In fact, we saw something similar at AAA when he had a 1.9 homer per 9. When you see these kind of home run rates and a really low walk rate, do you think that maybe the guy's in the zone a little bit too much? This is where we can see the difference between command and control. The control seems to be there for Zebby Matthews. He can put the ball in the zone consistently, but he can't necessarily put the ball where he wants. And that's what command is being able to put the ball where you want, whether it's in or out of the zone. What does he need to overcome to start cutting into this home run rate? Because obviously you cannot succeed with a 2.6. You can't even succeed with like a 1.6 though. So what does Zebby Matthews have to do to start fixing these home runs?
Yeah, well, just based on I'm just going off of a couple of pitches here, looking at him. Everything seems to come out pretty flat, such that, if he's not commanding in the zone, or even if he is commanding in the zone, it seems to be on a pretty easy plane. And you know how much I hate the whole downhill plane thing.
Yep. So
that's not like a cover I usually use. But but it's interesting watching him. Like, and the ones he doesn't have control of, he has no control of. And such that what's interesting is watching in this case, I was watching the hitter. There's a pitch that almost hit him. He was a lefty against Zeb, who's a righty, and the ball broke into him, and he just took it off the thigh, but he swung at it, and so he struck out. It's just like, so no one really knew where that ball was going. The hitter had no idea where it was going. The pitcher didn't know where it was going. He obviously wasn't trying to hit, especially someone on his glove side. It's as far as what is it going to take to get him to lower that home run rate? Yeah, it's going to take more command, especially if the ones you miss end up in the zone. It's kind of like any guy who's big on throwing, especially big curveballs, big loopy curveballs. It's like if you miss such that you're a little bit slow and you end up like your legs are slow, and so your arm ends up too far out in front, then you'll spike it. And that's no big deal. The ball will stay in the park. But if you end up being too fast, your foot strike too fast, so your arm is late, you're going to end up releasing high, and the breaking ball is just going to fall straight into a bat. And that's how they end up getting doubles and home runs. The guys with breaking balls who end up having early release points are just killers. So it kind of brings me back to so many of the young guys that I was looking at for that you had brought up, and how many late release points I was seeing. It was incredible. It was that's exactly what you need to do to succeed, especially in a league that is so home run crazy as Major League is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, I always say that homers are the quickest way to ruin an ERA because, even if you have a great walk rate, you're still hoping that those are going to be solo shots, and then a couple of multi-run homers, and boom, you're completely skunked. As we wrap up here, did you have anybody who hit the cutting room floor? I'm sure you looked at more than just 3 guys. Who was kind of your first guy off the list there that maybe you wanted to talk about but ended up making a cut for? Did you have anybody hit the cutting room floor like that?
Well, I wasn't thinking draft champions format when I did it. Is draft champions a draft and hold?
Yes, 50-round draft and hold. And the reason we lean on it so much in the winter is because it's the most populated draft. You'll see the most of those happening in the fall and winter.
So I don't know if this guy's a very good target then in a draft and hold in a champions. Okay. I was thinking NFBC, like because what I'm right now, I'm getting ready for early drafts, right? There's some starting in mid-February. And so I'm thinking the type of players that I'm going to want near the end of my roster who might vault an ADP just because of them getting the job or something like that. And so that's why my head went to David Robertson. I got a guy who I think, he's a free agent right now. People have basically forgotten about him. He's 40 years old. He just gets 11, 12 Ks per 9 every single season. He just has an ERA of 3 and a whip of 1.1 every single season.
Capital C closer too. Exactly. Some managers love that. They want a guy that's done it, has the track record. And if he goes to a team that doesn't have an established closer, you could see Robertson maybe sneaking another handful of saves at 20 and 18 and 22 and 23. Just 2 last year because Kirby Yates took that job and ran with it. But another solid season from Robertson last year. 3 ERA, 111 whip. Yeah,
exactly. And with a 40-year-old, I'm not going to bring up any of his mechanics or any of that kind of stuff. It's more of a, like you said, he's got the capital C closer. That 3-year run where he got 127, something like that, saves that long ago. He's still been just as effective. He's just pitching in the 8th inning instead of the 9th or the 7th inning or whatever. And so, yeah, if he gets to the right situation and especially imagine him getting to some team where that they're going to deal him at the deadline, but they needed a closer for 3 months so they could get a prospect for him at the deadline. And then he ends up going to some contender that needed a closer, and voila. I assume his ADP is when I was looking at the NFBC one, it was in the 500s.
446 in the DCs. Okay. And, you said maybe he's not that much of a DC pick. I think actually David Robertson could be because, if you get your established closers out front, you still want to get a couple spec picks, right? Because you can't pick anybody up in season. So if one of your main closers flops or gets hurt or something happens, you want to have a couple guys that are speccing. David Robertson could be that sort of guy. Why are you shaking your head?
Unbelievable. Because you're talking about reliever right now.
Oh, yeah, I know. But it's at the end.
I had to get my suit. I had to get my suit from the dry cleaners for 5 minutes. And I come back and I hear you guys talking about, oh yeah, he's a closer. I'm like, oh,
At least we weren't
gosh.
talking hitters. Hang on,
I mean, I guess-
before you end our time here, I know it's 4:00,
Yeah.
but I gotta get one passing thought. If you got to see him at all, Doug, Jose Soriano, my other favorite angel. I love this guy. Actually, this lovely man right here, Nicholas Pollock, is the one who put me on Jose Soriano last year. I jumped on that train instantly. I love this guy. Ended up getting hurt late last season. Did you get a chance to look at him at all last year when he was having a nice 113 inning season?
I did not, but I will watch it right now if you guys will give me.
Well, okay, Sporer,
Oh no, I don't have time. Sorry.
What?
No, I didn't check them out. I'm sorry.
No problem, Doug. No problem. What was that, Nick?
Unfortunately, I
Did
did
you
not.
talk football?
Did I
Any
do what
football
about?
talk? No, right? When I was
No.
gone, football
We
talk?
didn't talk football.
Good.
I did use. I used the term handcuff to describe.
Oh yeah.
Kamara
We actually
to
technically did. We
DeGrom.
technically did. I forgot. We actually did. I mentioned Saquon Barkley too. Yeah. We actually did talk football.
Oh no.
Boy, we really.
All right. So this has been a fantastic panel with these. No, really, this has been great. Ben Brown needs a cutter, absolutely. I think his fastball four-seamer doesn't perform well enough, and maybe he does transition to that. That'd be really cool. Brady Singer is the same guy he's been since 2021. Also, Cole Reagans. Come on, we've been over this. It was Tread Athletics, not the Royals. The Royals did nothing.
But I wasn't suggesting that they made him or anything, but how has he avoided being ruined by them? I guess because
he was so good. And
so they just left him alone.
What happened? I mean, what happened? He got traded, and he was like, "Hey guys, I need to get out lefty, so I'm going to do a slider." And they're like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, do what you want." They weren't thinking about him. It's midseason. Comes up and he's just amazing. Like, oh, cool.
And this guy's ready made. We don't have to mess
he's
with
just like,
him.
all right, and like, let's just kick our feet up. Look at how smart we are. Let's light a cigar. Let's. That's what they did.
And I do agree with you on Singer being basically the same guy. Like even as his stats have ebbed and flowed, the skills have been the same. But I am moved by Doug's point about, if he goes to a team that doesn't mess with his momentum and actually lets him pitch the way his mechanics will let him, then maybe he isn't as affected by the park move. I'm not saying that it's a great place to pitch or anything, but other guys have been successul there, and maybe he can maintain a mid to upper threes ERA.
Singer is the kind of pitcher that would benefit more as that sinker guy, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But also, you guys are talking about extension a lot. Doug, I'm with you. We have it on our player pages. We have extension for everybody. If you just go in the repertoire section and stuff,
Gotcha.
You'll see with IVB and height adjusted VAA and extension. You'll see that
they got everything at
Joey Cantillo. So 7.5, I think he is with it. It's just so he's a lefty with a good changeup and everything. It's just two problems. One, how good is the breaking ball? And two, I don't think that the fastball needs to be located well to take advantage of it, especially at 89, 90. But also the Guardians are like, yo, we got Tristan McKenzie coming back. We got Slade Ciccone. Like they want to be stretched out too. They have a lot of options at the end of this.
That's fair.
Mentioned Ben Lively, who somehow did whatever. I still don't quite get it.
I don't either. But it was great for them. It was a huge summer run for them. He was basically the number 2 behind Bybee. I'm not betting on that happening again, though. So I do, and I love Gavin Williams. So Bybee, Williams, healthy McKenzie. I'm a Luis L. Ortiz guy, so it's not going to be easy for Cantillo to crack. What's that?
Luis L. Ortiz. Oh gosh, so fun. But yeah, guys, this was great. It was super fun having good, interesting stuff about momentum. I don't really think about that enough, and I don't think about that explosiveness at the end. Sometimes I take it negatively because I see it as there's more of a you're shortening the window of hyper speed so that there's just boom and you can't control that. It's so hard to be repeatable with it. When I see that giant momentum, that giant arm swing at the end, it's why the super long guys like Tyler Glasnow or something are just generally bad command, because you have such a ridiculous whip at the end that it's hard to get it. But you're talking, I mean, that's me talking about arm momentum, less so of lower half momentum in that way.
Well, and that's why that's why I'm so big on my favorite phrase is follow the baseball. When I'm working with players, it's follow the baseball. I want that momentum, but you're right. I want it spinning off to the side. You don't want that's what I call the flail. The best guys, and this is part of why I like Hurst so much, is it's explosive and he's still controlling some of the leg spin, but all of his energy is still moving towards the plate. It's following the baseball, and that's what I look for most. When a guy's doing that, I call it, it's like going down the fuselage of a plane. If I'm working with pitchers, I'm trying to help them with their momentum. Like you want to stay linear, and you don't want to waver side to side. Imagine you're going right down the middle of the fuselage of a plane, and when I see guys who do that, guys like hers, it's exciting when they can just continue to have that impulse where they increase momentum and they throughout the delivery. It's really cool.
Yeah, Nick, I did roast you for not liking hers. That is accurate, right?
The changeup is not as consistent as we want it to be, and then the slider isn't very good, and it's just like fastball or not, and the fastball should not be what it was last year, but I could be very much wrong. When you hear so many people saying something different than you gotta be like, okay, hold on a second, let me see what biases I'm assigning to this, and maybe I'm wrong on hers. The very last one was also Noah Syndergaard was a perfect example of that to me. When I first saw his debut, he was just completely straight. And I was like, that was the highest review I ever gave in a debut at that time. Was because it's just like, he's just completely centered and straightforward with the momentum and everything. So that was okay. All right, guys. So good for you both to be back and united for this. This is amazing.
Great seeing you, Doug. I love you, brother. Have a good one.
It's great seeing you, Paul. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for all this. And obviously, I've been a little while. I've been out of the loop, so I don't know my sources. I'm going to go check out those sources. I'm going to dig into Pitcher List and really see that stuff. I'm going to geek out on the extension stuff. That's awesome. Thanks so much.
You have no idea what you're getting yourself in.
And Nick, I'll see you tomorrow for the fireside.
You didn't even seem sick at all, Sporer.
Well, I was gonna say everyone can judge my improvement from day to day to day, since I'm, each of the last 3 days I'm on. My voice is a little scratchy, but other than that, I'm just really, really tired and achy. But I'll be ready for tomorrow's fireside. So
awesome.
Have a good one,
thank you
y'all.
guys
I'll talk to you guys later.
And I'm already pushing Trevor Powers far too long here. So take care, guys.